You know that sinking feeling when everything you built in life, all the little victories, and every ounce of pride you have in yourself gets wiped away in an instant? Yeah, that was me. But before you feel sorry for me, let me just say this. I'm not innocent. Not in the way you'd think. Let me take you back a few years. I met Greg when I was 27, fresh out of a relationship with a man who, in hindsight, had all the emotional depth of a puddle. Greg was the opposite. Charming, attentive, ambitious. He was the kind of guy who made you feel like you were the only person in the room, and for someone like me, who always craved validation, it was intoxicating. We got married quickly. Too quickly, my friends said, but I didn't listen. Who needed cautious love when Greg was offering the whirlwind romance of a lifetime? Or so I thought. We started a business together, a small but thriving marketing consultancy. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and then some. Greg handled the finances while I took care of the clients and creative work. Everything seemed perfect, or, again, so I thought. But over time, I noticed things weren't quite adding up. Our bank account seemed leaner than it should have been, and Greg became more secretive, constantly locking his office door and making late-night calls. I brushed it off because who was I to question the financial genius of our operation, right? I was the creative mind, the one who made things look pretty. Money wasn't my thing. One day, out of the blue, Greg came to me with an idea. We should expand, take on bigger clients, scale up. He pitched it as though it was the next logical step, and I believed him. What I didn't know then was that Greg had been siphoning money from the business for months, funneling it into some offshore accounts, and leaving the bare minimum in our joint accounts. But that wasn't even the worst part. About 6 months ago, everything came crashing down. It was an ordinary Tuesday when I got a call from the bank asking about several flag transactions made in my name. I was confused. These weren't my transactions, and I hadn't authorized anything remotely close to what they were describing. I hung up and confronted Greg, but his response sent shivers down my spine. "They're your accounts, Sarah. You're the one who set them up." My heart sank. Was he joking? Did he think I wouldn't notice him lying straight to my face? But the look in his eyes told me everything. Greg had set me up. Within days, I found myself facing charges for fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank statements, electronic signatures, emails that seemed to be sent from my account. It looked like I'd orchestrated a financial crime spree. And Greg? Well, he was the innocent spouse who had no idea what his conniving wife was up to. I was ruined, completely and utterly ruined. But here's where things take a darker turn. See, Greg thought he was clever. He thought he could frame me and walk away with everything. What he didn't know was that I had been keeping my own secrets. Secrets far more dangerous than some financial misdeeds. I grew up with a father who wasn't just in business. He was the business. A man whose connections ran deeper than most people could even imagine. And no, I'm not talking about friendly business lunches or charity galas. My father's network was built on blackmail, intimidation, and, when necessary, making people disappear. I didn't like that world. I had distanced myself from it as much as possible. But when you grow up in that environment, some things stick with you. And here's the thing. I had something Greg didn't know about. Something he couldn't even imagine existed. My father always warned me to keep an insurance policy, something to fall back on if life ever threw me under the bus. So, I did just that. Years ago, during the early days of our marriage, I had bugged Greg's office. It wasn't out of paranoia. Okay, maybe a little. But more because I was curious about his late-night phone calls and shady meetings. I never expected to use the recordings, but now they were my ace in the hole. For years, I had unwittingly amassed a collection of conversations, plans, and schemes that could bury Greg alive. Conversations with shady business partners, illegal deals, and even a phone call where he discussed how he planned to frame me for the fraud. The moment I realized I was being set up, I knew I had to play it smart. I couldn't just confront him. No, Greg had the upper hand legally, and he would make sure I went down first. Instead, I leaned into the role of the helpless, devastated wife, the one who couldn't possibly have known what was happening. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I was getting my ducks in a row. I contacted one of my father's old associates, a man who specialized in cleaning up messy situations. Let's call him Victor. Victor wasn't the kind of guy you'd want to owe favors to, but I was desperate. We met in a dimly lit bar where no one knew my name or cared to ask questions. I slid the USB drive across the table, and Victor gave me a look that said he knew exactly what this was. "What do you want me to do with this?" he asked, his voice as cold as ice. "I want Greg destroyed," I said without a second thought. Victor nodded, understanding the gravity of my request. "This will ruin him. You sure about that?" I was sure. Ruining Greg wasn't enough. I wanted him to feel the full weight of his actions, to lose everything the way he had tried to take everything from me. Victor didn't need more convincing. A few weeks later, Greg was arrested, but not for the fraud he had pinned on me. Oh no, it was much bigger than that. Thanks to the files I had handed over to Victor, Greg was charged with conspiracy, racketeering, and a laundry list of other criminal activities that stretched back years. I had barely scratched the surface of his illicit dealings, but what I found was enough to make headlines. When the news broke, it wasn't "Wife betrays husband in fraud scandal." It was Greg Matthews, esteemed businessman, arrested for criminal enterprise. And boy, did he deserve every bit of it. But the story doesn't end there. See, even after Greg's arrest, I knew I wasn't safe. He had powerful connections, people who wouldn't take kindly to me ruining one of their golden boys. So, I had to disappear. I sold everything, wiped my digital footprint, and moved to a country where extradition laws wouldn't be a concern. My father's associates helped with that part. They owed him enough favors to ensure I could slip away unnoticed. Now I'm living a quiet life under a new identity. No one knows who I am or what I've done, and honestly, it's better that way. Greg is still in prison, his empire in ruins, and I'm free from the life we built together. A life that was nothing more than a carefully crafted lie. Do I feel guilty? Maybe a little. But then I remember that Greg was willing to let me take the fall for his crimes, to leave me to rot in a cell while he enjoyed the fruits of my labor. So, no, I don't lose sleep over it. Not anymore. In the end, the truth is this. I'm not the hero of this story, but I'm not the villain either. I'm just a woman who played the cards she was dealt, and, if I'm being honest, I played them damn well. After months of living under the radar, I thought I'd escaped everything. I had a new life, a small cottage in a sleepy town, and no one here knew my past. I almost convinced myself that I could live like this forever, quiet, untouched by the chaos I had left behind. But the thing about secrets, especially ones as dark as mine, is that they have a way of resurfacing. It started with a letter, a plain, unmarked envelope left in my mailbox. My heart sank as soon as I saw it. I hadn't told anyone about this place, and I had made sure no one could trace me here. I opened it with trembling hands, already dreading what it might contain. Inside was a single note, written in neat, precise handwriting. "We know where you are. It's time to settle the score." No signature, no threats, but I knew exactly who it was from. "Victor, you don't walk away from people like him without paying a price." I had asked him to destroy Greg, and in doing so, I had entangled myself in debts I couldn't possibly repay. I had tried to fool myself into thinking I was free, but freedom is a luxury that comes with a hefty cost in my world. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I spent hours sitting at the kitchen table, staring at the letter, thinking about every move I had made, every person I had trusted. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, the silence too loud. I had two options, run again or face what was coming. And deep down, I knew running wasn't a solution. Not anymore. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to find me. I was going to find Victor first. After all, I wasn't the same naive woman Greg had once manipulated. I had learned a thing or two from my father's world, and if there was one thing I knew, it was this. You don't wait for the storm. You become it. Grabbing the burner phone I had stashed away for emergencies, I dialed a number I hoped I'd never have to call again. "Hello?" The voice on the other end was raspy, cold. "It's Sarah. We need to talk." The silence that followed was thick, loaded with the weight of what was to come. "You'd better hurry," he finally said, "because the clock's ticking and they're already closer than you think." I hung up and stared out the window at the quiet street beyond, knowing that my past was about to catch up with me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. I couldn't